Michelle Marie McGrath.
Hi there, today I'm speaking to Amanda Rootsey. Amanda is an eco-model, gentle living coach, writer and passionate educator. She spent many years as a fashion model working in Australia and Europe for labels such as Salvatore Ferragamo, Myer, Perry and Cartier, to name but a few. After a 2-year battle with cancer, she decided to settle on the beautiful Sunshine Coast. Being diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma certainly changed her perspective on life and inspired her to go vegan, start meditating, enjoy each moment and encourage others to find their balance and joy in life. She blogs about simple living, natural beauty, wellness, eco-fashion and more. Amanda presents a fresh and inspiring take on personal development training through her business, Shine From Within, with a strong focus on self-love, compassion for others and healthy living. Her zest for life and positive yet calming attitude is infectious, and nothing gives her greater pleasure than to see her students shine bright and realise their full potential. Still modelling, she now works exclusively with eco-friendly and ethical brands who share her values, often with more of an ambassadorship focus. You can find her at amandarootsey.com.au and shinefromwithin.com.au. So welcome, Mandy. So great to speak to you today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and obviously we've chatted about this before, but I'm looking forward to exploring this further with you today.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. And so just to start us off, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your personal background and whether you've not had a child due to choice or circumstance?
Sure. For me, it's a little bit of both, I guess. I was diagnosed with cancer at 24 and sort of spent a couple of years getting through all of that, and I treated it naturally initially and then ended up having to have chemotherapy and radiation as well. And it was stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the type of chemotherapy that they used was really quite harsh. And so I was told at the time it would be an 85% chance that I wouldn't be able to have kids at the end of it all. And they gave me this time to go away and freeze my eggs or embryos, actually. We went and met with the whoever it is that does that sort of thing. It was all a bit of a blur.
The embryo freezer.
Yeah. And they said, we'll mix your eggs with your partner's sperm and we'll grow a little baby, and then when they're a couple of days old, we'll then freeze them. And it just seemed to be, I don't know, it just didn't feel like the right thing to do at that time for us.
Yeah.
So we didn't go down that path. And we just kind of thought, whatever happens, happens. I sort of really believe that if I'm supposed to have a baby, then I'll have one, whether I declare to the world that I'm going to or not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've never really talked about wanting to have kids anyway. At the moment, we're still fairly young, but it's pretty likely that I can't have them anyway.
And so can they tell you definitively about that or not? Or I guess it would just be a case of like if you were trying, like it sounds as though it's not one of those things that you're like, okay, I've got a really strong driving need to make this happen.
Yeah, that's right. I have tried to find that out for the last year or so, actually, because my hormones are kind of going up and down, and I'm not sure whether I've gone into early menopause or not.
Right.
And the doctors and the endocrinologists can't really, no one's really given me a definitive answer. So some have said, we'll put you straight on HRT because it looks like you're definitely going into early menopause, and some have said, no, that's not necessarily the case. So, it's been really interesting.
And I suppose it's just one of those things that, like, everybody's body and health and everything is so individual that it's really difficult to just generalise on something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're obviously like really healthy and live, very sort of consciously, and you're very mindful of like the food that you eat and how you live and all that now, so I guess it would just be one of those things. And when you're talking about, going possibly into early menopause, is that as a result of the treatment that you had?
Yeah, that's right. But every now and then I get my period, so Who knows what's happening?
Yeah, so I mean, the body is amazing, isn't it, how it heals itself? So,
and it was incredible actually, because the endocrinologist was going to put me on a HRT treatment about a year after the chemo and everything finished, because they said if you haven't had anything happen now, then it's not going to. And I just left it and kept eating really healthy and meditating and all of those things that we know are good for us, and it has come back. So
it just goes to show, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so I suppose it's not really something that you want to embark upon unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Why go down that path if I don't need to?
And you're still so young,
Yeah. So I've just turned 30, so it's been a few years of just seeing where my body's going, I guess. But yeah, we're really happy not going down that path of having children anyway at this stage.
And also, I mean, so that's been kind of a journey like over like the last 6 years or so for you then, since you were diagnosed. And so, I guess it's one of those things that it's a bit different when you're thinking, okay, well, this is a choice that I've definitely got that I can explore. But I just wonder, how did you feel then when you're sort of being told, well, there's a very high percentage that you can anyway? I mean, that must be quite strange being told that when you're quite young, because I suppose it's not something that we'd necessarily think about unless we're actively trying,
That's
so
right.
I don't know, how would it be then, I suppose, when people have that as an option removed? I mean, did it bring things up for you to kind of think about, like, oh, wow, so do I want that or not? Or, how was that?
Yeah, it's been interesting because the thought of not being able to, that can be quite upsetting, whether you want to or not. Like you said, that feeling of we definitely can't, and that option's been taken away. It has certainly brought up some sad feelings, I suppose.
Yeah. And has it made it seem more appealing in thinking, well, even if I wanted to, maybe that's not going to be possible, even if I'm trying?
I don't know if appealing.
Well, I say, you know what I mean, that thing of like suddenly then going, oh, I hadn't really given it a lot of thought, but now that I'm sort of being told this, it's making me, look at it from a different position. Or
Yeah, do you mean, has it made me want to have them?
Like, has it made it seem like it would be more, something that you'd be more interested in? Because that's just how our minds often work, isn't it? Of like, oh, okay, well, I didn't think I was that bothered, but now that I'm being told that's being removed as an option, maybe I might have wanted that, but I just, I'm still quite young and I hadn't really given it that much thought up until this point.
Yeah, totally right. It certainly brought those feelings up, I think. Well, what do you mean I can't? Maybe I do want it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So it did, but
I mean, that's completely understandable. I think that would be a really normal kind of, thing to consider because of the way we're programmed as women in our society, that like, being a wife, being a mother, should be a central driving force in your life that brings meaning. I mean, that's just how we're conditioned.
And I think we kind of have that in us too, don't we?
Yeah.
We've got that. Yeah. So it certainly came up for me. But then I always come back to that, well, whatever's meant to be will be, and and having that trust and faith there. Yeah.
That, that's right, just that thing of, okay, well, if you're kind of being in a place of being accepting of what's unfolding and being very present to that, and just realising, like you say, having faith and trust that your life is unfolding as it's meant to. And we can't always, we can't ever see like what the bigger picture is often for us, or what path we're being led down. We don't really know, do we?
Yeah. But, I noticed that, if I'm talking to other people, that they are so clear and so focused on bringing a child into the world that it's like they're here and they're born to do that. So when I see those people and I talk to them, I realise I can see that difference there.
Yeah, because some people, they are really clear about that, aren't they? Some women are very sure that they want that to be a part of their life and a part of their future, and they might have always felt like that. So I think, that can be great if you are that clear. It's different when people feel kind of ambivalent and in the middle, because that can be a little bit confusing. Because, often as women, I was talking to somebody this morning and she was saying, she kept thinking she never really did feel like that. So she kept wondering if there was something wrong with her.
Yeah, wow.
And I thought it's amazing how we as women automatically can go to that default position of going, okay, well, I'm not fitting in with that traditional stereotype. Is it that something's wrong with me because maybe I should be feeling like that? And so it's actually really reassuring, I think, to have these conversations and think, lots of people feel like that. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It's just, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. And really, but we can often, beat ourselves up or be very self-critical about that. And so I think, like, the more we sort of talk to each other about this, you go, oh, okay, it's not just me. There are lots of people that feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what you're doing is so important, getting those conversations happening, because we don't often have these conversations, and certainly not in public or...
No. Well, it can still be quite taboo, really, and sort of, obviously it's a very personal topic. But were you ever kind of aware of any sort of pressures from, like your own friends or within your family, or did they just accept, okay, well, that's a result of the treatment and stuff that you've been through, and so that's just the way it is? So do you think, because you've had that situation that you sort of have been like working through with your health, that it was kind of a different angle on it?
It might sound strange, but sometimes it feels like that's kind of the easy way out of that conversation for me.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, well, I'm not sure if I can. So that kind of, that's much easier to accept for people than simply saying, not sure if I want to. Yeah,
true. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because then it's almost like, well, that's been taken out of my hands because it was, side effects from the treatment that I've had to have. And then I guess that brings an end to that conversation.
Yeah,
if they don't really know you.
My positioning.
And then they think, so I guess in some ways that can be kind of easier than, like you say, and less confronting than, well, I just don't want them.
Yeah, it does bring up other conversations then, though, I guess, or other feelings from other people, because they can then feel feel sorry for you, and then change the way that they talk about their children, or
I hadn't thought of that, but I guess you mean they're sort of then being pitying, and you're like thinking, well, or what do you mean, sort of like you're saying, like they're talking about that, because they're then, like you say, feeling sorry for you, thinking, oh, okay, so then they're careful around you.
I've picked that up a couple of times, and I certainly don't want people to pity me. But I love, there's certainly no resentment there to anyone else, because they can have children, but it's quite interesting, because that pitying kind of feeling can come into it too.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, it's all well intended. They think they think they're being kind of empathetic, and they're trying to be sympathetic, aren't they? So, but it's just that thing of, again, it just demonstrates how awkward we are and ill at ease often with these very personal conversations that
Definitely.
are so central to our identity as women.
Yeah, that's such an important point. Like it's such a big part of our life, and as soon as you challenge that status quo, then you're challenging the very beliefs that a lot of women have that maybe they can end up going down that path because they feel like they have to.
Yeah, and I think so many women don't even really question it necessarily if they've just assumed that's a part of their life. It's the next part that, they're going to embark upon in their relationship, or, whatever. They haven't maybe necessarily thought about it. They've, in a way that, why do I want a child? What does this mean for me? How do I think that's going to impact my life? What do I feel that's going to bring, So it's kind of, I think it's a very interesting thing to explore for all women, really, in that looking at, what is it that brings purpose and meaning to my life, and what is it that makes me feel fulfilled? Because that's going to be different for every person.
Yeah. Gosh, it's such an interesting topic. I'm looking forward to listening to all of your podcasts as you explore this, because it is quite a delicate conversation, isn't it?
It really
you've been very brave.
Well, it really is, but you sort of... the thing is as well, everybody's got such a different story and a different experience. Like, you've got quite a unique perspective in that, like what you said, and then how people then treat you, and be very careful around that, and the way that you're maybe able to sidestep some of the questioning because you focus on, maybe I can't because of what's happened with my treatment. And so it is really interesting in noticing how people respond, or how, if they're awkward or if they're not awkward, or so I guess the more we talk about this openly, it makes it much easier for people to express how they really feel.
Yeah, and I mean, I do feel drawn to working with young women, and maybe that's a part of that. I love being around kids, and I love trying to help them anyway, and I think a part of that is probably me feeling like that's a way that I can still contribute to the new generation coming through and help them however I can.
And so with the work that you're doing, so with like Shine From Within, obviously you're working with like young women and girls to really focus on that inner beauty and not be so focused on the externals. And so can you share with us a little bit about how how that work came about and how you got started with that? Because obviously it's really important at such a delicate time, really, like teenage and that sort of, when you're moving between that transition between like girl and woman, it's such an important time, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. For me it started when I actually did a deportment course when I finished high school, and I got a lot out of it. I loved the confidence aspect of it, and I loved learning about even the makeup and the job interview skills and dressing for your body shape. I just loved learning all of that, and taking that out into the workforce was really important for me. And it was, as you said, it was a beautiful way to help transition to womanhood from being a girl. And then I started teaching those courses for the same company. So I would go into schools and teach deportment courses, and I would run them on the school holidays as well, and got into modelling, and I loved the teaching aspect of it. I never thought I would do it myself, to be honest, run my own school, but after going through everything health-wise and learning so much about how important it is for us to take responsibility for our health, and for us to actually look after ourselves and nurture ourselves and love ourselves just the way we are, and look after each other, and just be gentle and not push and push and push the way that I think we're certainly taught in schools and throughout life, is just push and achieve and succeed and do as much and be as much and earn as much and all of those sorts of things. So after going through all of that, I sort of felt quite passionate about trying to share some of those messages with young women. And so I wanted to bring the two together, where you've got the deportment aspects, because I think that those are still really important. I think
still practical.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the more and more that we spend time online and those sorts of things, learning how to introduce yourself to someone, which is such a basic thing, is something that a lot of young people don't really know how to do these days.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, so those kind of, interactive skills like that, so that social aspect is important, and
Yeah,
especially when you're, still learning who you are. And I mean, obviously, we're always learning who we are, but during that sort of time where it is quite a transition, if you're going from school to further education, or if you're going into the workplace, I mean, it's a really it can be very challenging. And so, Mandy, were you doing your modelling before you started teaching, or was that like around the same time? Like, did the modelling just come kind of, was that something that you focused on intentionally, or did that just kind of, happen really?
I think so. The course that I did was a deportment and modelling course.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I always liked drama in school, and I loved the performance aspect of it, I guess, be kind of taking on a new role with each job.
Yes.
So I got into modelling about the same time and was doing it. So I was teaching the courses and I was modelling, and I was at uni and had another couple of jobs too, I think, in there. So it kind of happened about the same time, and I was doing that right up until I was diagnosed with cancer.
Right. And then you sort of then, I guess, started to really look at, things from a more eco-friendly perspective in what you were putting in your body and on your body with the products and obviously the companies that you were working for. And so was that really the sort of turning point in you then deciding, okay, I'm only going to work with like ethical companies?
Yeah, well, to be honest, at the end of all of that, I didn't think I'd get back into modelling at all.
Yeah, of course.
Because it just seemed a bit frivolous almost.
Yeah.
And because I had learnt so much about natural health and I'd gone vegan and started meditating, and just once we finished treatment and everything in Brisbane at the hospital, we then went and lived off the grid for a year in a shipping container with one solar panel and a few veggie patches, and so felt really connected to nature and the environment. So to go back and then start working for brands that had no regard at all for the people that they're working with and the planet, it just seemed silly. So I didn't think I'd get back into it at all. But a few businesses started approaching me who were ethical and eco-friendly, and I thought, well, I'm really happy to do whatever I can to promote and support these businesses. So that's kind of how the eco-modelling came about, really.
So, wow, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, how when we're really following what's true and authentic for us, you have these kind of opportunities that come up that are completely aligned with that.
Yeah, that's right. It just happened organically because that was because I was quite strong in my values, I guess, when it came to that.
And especially when you've been confronted with something that's like potentially life-threatening, then of course I would imagine that it really does make you reevaluate everything and realise that, life's very precious and very fragile. Yeah,
definitely. That was one of the biggest lessons from going through all of that, is that, life can change in an instant, and we have to take care of the people and animals and planet around us.
Yeah, that we're all living on the same, we're all living in the same place.
Yeah.
We're not separate, are we, from any of it?
Yeah, and if I can help young girls realise some of those things, and, even though we covered the deportment stuff, we talk quite a lot about self-worth and positive body image and those wellness aspects, so that hopefully a little plant might be seeded for them to live a little bit more gentle, I suppose.
And so it's interesting, you're really using those nurturing qualities that, I guess some women use that with their own families and other women use that with the work that they're doing. And so you are having an impact with those nurturing and caring qualities in that way.
Yeah, I'd never really thought about it like that before.
As they're going through that transition.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and maybe that's why, maybe that helps me come to terms with things too, is finding a way to nurture or, feel like I'm helping someone else, I suppose.
That's right. And also, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, especially when children are very young, that can be all consuming, bringing a family into the world. And obviously it's, well, it is. And obviously it would be the most challenging experience that most people would ever go on and, creating that life. So I suppose when we're faced with not having that situation, it also opens up a lot of opportunities to really channel that energy and focus and love and care into something else that's equally meaningful and can have a positive impact and a ripple effect, on lots of other people. And you just don't know how you're influencing these girls to then go on and do, whatever's important for them. So I think we just don't know sometimes, do we, how, something that we can think is very small can actually have a larger impact further down the track, so it's just beautiful. And with all the work that, like you're saying, obviously now you're only working with eco-friendly and ethical brands, it really, that kind of leads me into one of the myths that we have that sometimes can come up when people are challenged around either choosing not to have children or through circumstance. One of the myths that we have in our society is that, belief that we need to procreate and keep the species going and all of that sort of kind of thing, when in actual fact, the situation that we're faced with now is that we are using up the Earth's resources quicker than they're being replaced. And we know this, it's quite dramatic in recent years, isn't it? The impact that we're having.
Yeah, that's right. The impact we're having on the planet, the carbon footprint that we're all producing. It's quite, it's very easy to just take and not really think about the type of impact we're having on the environment, but all the research suggests that it is, as you said, quite a dire situation that we're heading into.
I was reading something recently, and it was saying that basically in the United States the average carbon footprint is 5 times more than in any other country in the world, which I was just like, wow, that's really quite a lot to kind of get your head around and think that's huge. And I suppose, obviously that taking into account the measurement of our activities, like from burning fossil fuels for electricity, heating, transport, etc. And apparently the richest 20% in the world are actually creating 90% of the wastage through consumption.
Wow. It's just crazy, isn't it? And I remember when we started to look at going vegan, a lot of the information that came out from looking at that way of living, I guess, was that raising animals, raising livestock for food has an enormous impact on the planet. And some of the stats I saw were that it has a bigger impact on the planet than all the transport in the world combined, because we grow a whole bunch of grain and soy and things to feed these animals that are taking up a lot of space and excreting and causing a lot of waste, and it ends up becoming quite a big cycle, and only really because of the way and the scale that we're doing things at now, that we've got so many people in the world, and now that we're consuming so much, it is just everything's at such a large scale.
It's interesting. And obviously there's that situation in China where, people are only allowed to have one child, but I think there are talks about that sort of changing. So what do you feel about that? Is this something that ideally people should take into consideration when they're thinking about having children, or if they're thinking, about how many that they're having? Because obviously we've got plenty of children in the world that do need support that are already here, and there is an argument that we should really focus the majority of our attention on people that are already here that need support and caring, that may be orphaned, or sort of, especially through things that we're experiencing recently through a lot of natural disasters. For example, what's been happening in Nepal, there are a lot of sort of children that end up being orphaned through these kind of situations.
I think it's really beautiful when people do go down that path, providing providing that support and a loving family for someone that doesn't have it already, that isn't, lucky enough to have that in their life already and naturally. That's a big question.
It's a massive,
isn't it?
It's a massive topic, and I know that there are lots of people that would love to adopt and foster, but I don't think it's necessarily the way the systems are set up currently. It's not that easy to actually do that, even if they want to.
Yeah, and whether, as you said, whether that should be, whether the environmental impact should be a consideration of people before they have children or before they have the fourth or the fifth or the sixth child. That's that's a really big discussion and a big topic.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't think it's one of those things that's typically at the forefront when you're deciding whether to go down that path.
No, but I suppose a lot of people are becoming much more sort of conscious and aware of things that are going on in our environment. So it would give them pause to think, okay, well, what sort of world am I bringing my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren into, if we're not sort of, taking more care with our environment and looking at how we do things in a more responsible way.
Yeah. I imagine these days too, the cost that must be involved in bringing a child into the world is just growing and growing as well.
Absolutely, especially like in our Western society.
Yeah, and that kind of can go hand in hand with the environmental impacts, I think, too. Yeah, because it's just more consuming, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's like you say, it's just such a huge topic, and I guess, look, there's no one size fits all, is there? And I guess we can't really determine what's right for somebody else. So it's one of those things. But it's such an interesting kind of area to explore. So what would you love to leave the world as your legacy, Mandy, if you're not going to, say, it's not going to be in the traditional sense through family? So what do you feel, if you had a message that you would like to leave or an impact, what do you think that would be around?
I think the work I'm doing, already, I feel like it all comes back to being gentle. That's what I feel really passionate about now, I guess, after everything that I've experienced. And everyone has such different experiences, don't they? But for me, it feels like that, if people can just take a little bit more care with themselves and appreciate every moment and look after one another.
Yeah, bringing more compassion.
Yeah, that's that would be my message, I think.
And what do you feel are the major benefits that you've experienced in not having children? What do you think the plus side of that has been for you that you've experienced?
It's a nice question, isn't it? Because it's not often discussed, is it? And if it is, then it can be quite selfish.
Yeah,
so
the way it's
can
pitched.
Be seen as quite selfish. Yeah.
Of okay, well, you must be off on holiday kind of every few weeks, or you obviously sleep in till midday and you're just swanning around. It really is. It's not.
That's right.
Yeah.
Got no responsibilities.
That's right.
Suck it, everyone else. No, those two things are great. Being able to sleep in is a lovely benefit. And I think being able to, parents are just, they're so busy, and they've got, like you said, one of the biggest and hardest jobs in the world, and it is all consuming a lot of the time. So I guess the benefit of not having children is that you can kind of, I feel like you can more consciously create your day and
have that freedom.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that does, I don't think that means that you're selfish anyway.
Yeah.
Because you can be focusing that time on doing other projects that are giving back in some way, and that's a big thing. I think a big benefit is that, not everyone is in a position to be able to work on other things or give back in much of a way, because they are so focused on bringing up their own family, and they've got to be so focused on that at that time. So
Of course, and we've all got only a certain number of hours in the day, and
Yeah,
a lot of women I know who don't have children actually do quite a bit, of philanthropic work. They do contribute to different charities. They might be mentoring children through other ways and doing like similar in the way that you are, so it can play out in different ways, but most of the people that I've spoken to, they're very conscious about the level of contribution that they want to make, and having children in their life in other forms, whether it's through family, friends, godchildren.
Yeah.
So they are quite involved most of the time with kids in that way.
Yeah, and like you said, the freedom. Like we love that. My partner and our dog and I can just jump in our van and go for a drive and stay somewhere for the night. Or
Yeah, if you feel like it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
No, it is. So it's great. So have you got any sort of plans for the future from Shine From Within? Like, I know that you've got quite a lot on with that at the moment, but have you got any other ways that you're thinking of sort of developing that?
Yeah, I'm working on a few little things coming up with Shine, and I'm still doing the coaching as well. I'm doing quite a bit more gentle living coaching with women that want to feel a bit more peaceful in their life and want to get clear on what's going to bring them more peace and happiness into their life.
Fantastic.
So I'm working a bit on that as well.
Well, that's great, Mandy. And so the best place for anyone to find out all about you is at amandarootsey.com.au and shinefromwithin.com.au. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Michelle.
Well, thanks so much for your time today. I love talking to you, and look forward to hearing how more develops with Shine moving forward.
Thanks, Michelle, and good luck with the podcast. I just think it's such an important topic, so thank you for doing this.
Great, thank you very much. It's fantastic.
Unclassified woman.